I am back again in this presentation to talk to you about the importance of creating a course as well as having a view towards a certification program in the future. And this is sort of the culmination of a few things that we've been talking about over the last week or 2 weeks that incorporates what we know about wanting to protect our content, about wanting to make sure that we're not putting out just kind of regurgitated or watered down material into the world, which has a negative effect on the coaching industry in general, makes coaching clients very suspicious about what it is they're buying, and just generally addresses the fact that the people in my audience, I don't even have to say it to you guys, like I know that it is your intention to really deliver and a lot of times over deliver a really great result to the people who buy from you. And so it is beneficial for all of us to have a view towards legacy when we're building our coaching practices. So you may hear my 2-year-old downstairs screaming, but we'll just have to deal with it. A couple of years ago now, I wrote an email to my list that said, I think the subject line was something like an unusual business model that very few people have the character and foresight to implement. And that was sort of the first public discussion that I ever had about these certification programs. And I did mean for it to be a little bit of a provocative subject line, but I do mean it because, as I mentioned in the prior live stream, for those of you who are there, a lot of coaches who get really successful are faced with a choice. They're so far ahead of the people that they serve. Usually we're just a few steps ahead, or that's kind of what we're taught in the coaching industry. Like, you can teach if you're just a few steps ahead. But there comes a point where people are very far ahead. The coaches are very far ahead of their students, and it's just not exciting to them anymore to be able to deliver that material. And what the big gurus will teach them is all of these methods of scaling. Leverage your time, have team deliver the material, increase the pricing, all of these different methodologies that are being taught. But there are very few people, more now than 2 years ago, but very few people who are leading the charge to say there's another way to scale. So for those of you who are not at the point where you're in that boat or you're newer to coaching, this conversation is still relevant to you because the core of a certification program and all of the things that it can do is really a seed that you plant right at the start of your coaching practice. And I'm going to explain that in extreme detail here in a moment. So I'm here to propose to you that creating a certification where other people learn your methodology and learn what gets clients results so that they can go out and incorporate those teachings and work with their own clients is the alternative way to scale that keeps building brand equity for you, that creates a group of peers for you who are still very excited and engaged and want to deliver that high touch to end clients, that maybe you are at a stage where you don't want to do it in as much volume as you've been previously doing it, and just, have other reasons that you want to turn what is normally a service, coaching is normally a service, into a fixed asset that will work even when you are not directly serving clients or directly serving your groups. So there's still a place for one-on-one coaching. There's still a place for running groups. But if you do get to the point where you're thinking, I'm really limited in the amount of impact I can make because I'm tired and because my audience is just growing to such a point, certification is really a great thing for you to be thinking about. When coaches come to me for certifications, which now is happening more and more, I got 3 who have come in just this week. It's in the air, I think. What they are, of course, concerned about is shifting this paradigm of, like, normally I'm used to not wanting people to reteach my stuff. Either number one, because just by going through my programs, they're not learning it in the degree of detail they need to then turn around and teach it. They may think they are, but they're really not. But also, I don't want people ripping off my material. And so there's a big shift that has to happen internally so that you can feel safe to actually empower people to use your materials in a certain way. And I'll show you the framework that I have come up with. That's kind of my proprietary method for helping coaches work through that thought process. But I want to even back up and go back to this concept that you can start thinking about certification from day one in your coaching business. And here's how you do it. A lot of times dissatisfaction of coaching clients comes from the fact they did not get the outcome that was promised, whether expressly or just implied by the sales page or the sales conversation for the program. And a lot of times this has to do with a coach who wants to make the sale. So it's not that they're being disingenuous by saying, I can help you, when really they can't. They may just not have a crystal clear understanding of the right point A. If you're in that boat, if you've got people who are expressing dissatisfaction with the program, telling you they don't really think they have what it takes, I encourage you to take a step back and view that with curiosity and view it from the standpoint of constructive criticism. Is it possible that you're trying to help people who really aren't bringing a certain skill set to the table that they need to succeed, and your program isn't in that particular skill set? So an example that my own coach will use, and I'll tell you about her in a minute, is that if you're teaching people how to close on a sales call, the implication is that they're already getting sales calls. So if you've got someone who's like, I'm new in business, I don't know, and you're like, I'm really excited, I want to make this sale, and you tell them to come into the program, but they're not even getting lead flow to begin with where they're on the phone with people, that's not a good point A. That's a pretty stark example, but there are more subtle ways that this can show up. And so everybody thinks that their point A is very crystal clear. I'm not an expert in this area, but I do know from working with a lot of coaches that usually it's a little more nebulous than it could be. And I encourage you to go and check out Eleanor Strong, Eleanore. Amazing free resources available. She gives away the whole framework. I did pay $6,000 to work with her. I think it's more now. I am a professional writer. That is what lawyers do. And this was a total game changer, even for someone who writes thousands of words a day for the last 15 years. So go and check out Eleanor, particularly if you're more along the time frame of being ready to set up a certification. But anyways, going back to why this is important, identifying that point A to understand who is coming into your program and therefore who's getting results is really imperative if you're going to have a certification, because the certification takes a method that you've developed, it adds a coaching element, self-awareness, accountability, holding space, and those two things, methodology plus accountability, equals the result. If you are consistently getting a result for an identifiable point A, this means you're ready to create a certification. Now, for a lot of coaches, they may have solved a problem for themselves. So let's say it's a health coach and they resolved type 2 diabetes using a certain framework that they have developed and resources they've drawn on. Those principles would go into a course. I'm not saying you have to sell a course. I'm not saying you need to get away from coaching and divert your attention to the course piece of this. But if you can distill your method into those types of principles, you're already at step one of being able to ultimately create a coaching certification because you've got the method distilled. A lot of newer coaches, they have the method. They've solved the problem for themselves. They may or may not have put that into a course, but then they're going out in the world and saying, hey, I can coach you to the same result that I've gotten. But until you've actually consistently gotten clients' results, you need to frame your coaching from the standpoint of being along on their journey. You're not going to be promising particular outcomes. And even when you can promise particular outcomes, we want to be careful about it. But I'm talking just more generally for the purposes of our discussion. So new coach, you probably have a method that you are going to employ. It may even be one that has worked on yourself, and that's why you're getting into coaching in the first place. I would encourage you to get that on paper, if not even go out and record the videos and record the trainings and have that housed somewhere. When you've got that piece fixed in place, that's one fewer set of variables that you're dealing with in building your coaching practice. Then you can go out and look at, okay, what type of characteristics of this point A person coming in, what do they have in common that's helping them actually get results when I'm with them along their journey? What ends up happening is you start to see patterns of this type of person is best suited to get results in applying my method. Then you can go out with your marketing and market specifically to the people who are most likely to get that result. And that's where you'll really start to get traction and build a reputation. You'll also be getting this evidence of a repeatable way to get a certain result. So when you've got the method and you've got that repeatable way to get the result, you can go out and teach other people to do that exact same thing. They'll build your brand, they'll be very excited, you'll have a community of peers instead of always just be dealing with clients, and this can be a huge game changer in your business. So you can see why having the course is so critical, because if you're going to certify someone, you've got to teach them what the method is. That would be the course. And then there's this kind of meta level next, where you've got to make sure they've got this additional competency of understanding how to apply that method so that they too can get repeatable results with clients. And just from a pricing standpoint, typically courses are the lowest price. People have all kinds of goals in the world that they're not achieving, and it's not due to lack of information. It's due to not being able to manage their minds, not having accountability, not having a coach, in other words. So a course goes for a very low price because, frankly, the material is probably gold, but unless it's implemented, it's pretty worthless. So the course is not necessarily something that's going to be a huge revenue generator for you, and I'm not a business coach, and you can talk to any number of people about how you might incorporate the course from a financial standpoint. But going to the next level, as we know, one-on-one coaching is very high value. It's a premium service, or it should be, if you're not at the premium pricing point yet. So we still want you to focus on the coaching. That's where your revenue premiums are going to happen. So if a course is, let's say, somewhere between like $97 and even $19.97 price points, or what I'm seeing right now, your one-on-one coaching for 90 days is going to start at least that $2,000 price point, and that can just run the gamut. I mean, I have clients it's $100,000 a year to work with them for one call a month and up. So that is going to be very based on your reputation, your ability to get results, the cost of not having that result on the part of the coaching client, all of those types of things. But the idea here is, relative to a course, coaching is the premium product. And then even relative to the coaching itself, then you get into certifications. So now you're teaching someone a business model and a model for getting results, and that is, again, a premium pricing. So where a course may be, let's say, $2,000, certifications you're going to be seeing like $5,000 and up. Very rare circumstances do I have clients that are charging like $2,500 for a certification, and I'll talk to you about why that might be in a minute. But usually a really good and comprehensive certification program that has an identifiable method that also teaches people how to get the result, because not everybody is a master of the coaching craft, and you're going to help them get there so that when they apply the method, clients are getting results. That's how you're going to maintain integrity of what you've created. You've got those pieces, and then you have the certification opportunity where the person can go out and use this new identity you've created. A very famous one of these is the Online Business Manager Certification, OBM, created by Tina Forsyth. So you're creating this identity. They can go out in the world and say, hey, I'm an OBM. And that has meaning now because so many people have done it, and Tina's been so great at nurturing that brand. So Tina isn't inside your ClickFunnels account figuring things out anymore. Tina is training the trainers who want to go out and offer these services to end clients. And in doing that, that's the ultimate leverage. That's the ultimate way to turn her service into a product. And that's the ultimate way for her to have a fixed asset that can actually outlive her. Now, Tina, it just so happens, ironically, is on the low end of the spectrum for the cost of certification. I think it's not even $5,000. But Tina's been really intentional about understanding who is interested in certification, what they're willing to pay, and how much they're capable of earning once they have it. And ongoing support options where she makes up some of that revenue on the back end. But the point being here is that the course is very low price. Coaching is, can range, but it's higher price. And then certification is very high price, relative to these other offerings you have. And what I have found with the now many certifications I've done just over the last few years is a lot of times star students of yours will come forward and they want to be the first people that certify. These are people who otherwise, if the certification program didn't exist, might be like, I'm just going to go start teaching this stuff, probably innocently, but not doing it with your full training or guidance or permission, not realizing they're infringing, detracting from your brand equity. So this is why we want to have this path available. The certification path solves so many problems for an established coach. And again, going back to that development of a methodology with a simple course, it's something you can start thinking about right off the bat in your own coaching practice. So with all of that in mind, I do want to just say, like, when these STAR students come forward, usually there's 4 or 5 who are just, low-hanging fruit to start out with, and you might offer a beta price that could be maybe $10,000. And it's a very easy way to have a multi-5-figure or even low 6-figure launch just by going to your existing audience who knows your work, who loves you, and wants to have this opportunity. So with that being said, they can also expand well beyond that into much higher launches and recurring revenue streams as well, which I'll touch on in just a second. Again, if you have questions, just put them in the comments and I will come back to them. Sharon is watching this as we're going, so I'll come back to those questions as she copies them over. But let me turn to the types of certifications, because there are some people bring some preconceived notions about what they are, and so I'll kind of give you my definitions. There are really 2 types of certifications that I see and that I regularly do. We call them both certifications, but one of them is what I'm going to call a lower tier, and this is more of a designation. So designation would be lawyers who want to learn how to set up templates businesses and engage with their audiences the way that I do for a consistent passive income stream, mostly passive income stream, okay? I am going to teach them my methodologies in a certification program, for example. They are getting access to that material, much like a coaching program, or course that they would take, to actually employ those methods in their own business. Now, they may want some of my goodwill and my good juju in the world, and so I give them the opportunity to be called Good Authority Seal of Approval, or certified by Good Authority Co., or some kind of identifier that makes them part of my community, and that signals to end customers that, oh, this person is part of a network that's committed to not using legalese, to, having easily accessible and usable legal documents, whatever the case may be about what my brand values are, that stamp of approval is something that they can incorporate into their marketing. They can refer to themselves as certified by me, and they will actually hopefully employ the values and the methodology for getting results that I have taught them and that they've paid a premium to have access to. That's a designation. A true certification, I'll call it, is if all of that remains true, but instead of just employing it in their own business, they can also go out and teach other lawyers how to do it. So you can see that this really lends itself to business coaches especially, because you guys are the ones where people come into your program to learn how to scale to 7 figures. They are wanting to scale their own business coaching practice to 7 figures, but also now they have this new idea for a product they can sell to their clients, and it's all your work. So by having a certification program, you can bypass that and stop that kind of intellectual property leak by actually allowing them to reteach that material to their own clients. And so, I talked the other day about Kendall Summerhawk. She has the Sacred Brand Archetypes. My own coach and former business partner and friend, Amanda Goldman Petrie, has many certifications available related to certain type of marketing planning, where people can learn her method, they can apply it in their own business, but they can also reteach it as their own product in their own business coaching programs. So that's just one. She has, 7 or 8 certifications to learn these different skill sets and models that can be employed. Within all of that, there are many variations, but the distinction is, are they just using it in their own business and relying on your brand equity stamp of approval, or are they getting all of that plus the ability to reteach? And you don't have to know that right away, and you don't have to even decide that. That can change over the lifetime of your certification. So that does bring me to, okay, let's talk about the lifetime of a certification. I can get I have so many people. Oh, let me see. I think comments are happening and they're like swiped off my phone. Okay. Oh yeah. All right. That was bad. I thought I was like seeing too much screen. So a lot of times people will come to me and they'll say, hey, I've got 25 people in a certification program. And I'm going, oh no, what kind of client agreement did you use? Do you have certified XYZ practitioner, whatever that might be for you, trademarked? Do you have your logo trademarked? What have you told these people they can do with the certification once they get it? What is the certification process? Do they have to take a test? Do they have to pay to remain certified? These are all questions that must be answered because, as the theme of the last few days has made clear, once those ideas and the expression of your ideas and your methodology is out in the world, you can't unring the bell. People cannot unhear or unincorporate this new paradigm that you've delivered. So we want to make sure that from the instant that relationship starts, it's very clear about how it's going to progress so that you can maintain brand integrity and control over this material and not let it get away from you and get diluted and just lost or made generic in the industry. It's very shocking to a lot of people to learn that the term webinar is owned by one person who did nothing to protect it. I mean, think of the billions of dollars they would have made if they had properly protected the term webinar, and they didn't. So we all take that for granted, that it's just like a thing, a generic thing that doesn't belong to anybody, but there was a creator of it. And I know there are so many of you out there who are having these just strokes of genius and incorporating that into your work. And it's not being amplified to the degree that it could, and it's also being exposed to people kind of bastardizing it, for lack of a better word. So that is where my fire about this certification comes from. I love to help people create these legacy products. Now, the life cycle of the certification is the following. When I work with certification clients, I give them a 40-minute training that kind of walks them through and gives them ideas for each and every one of these concepts, as well as a questionnaire that helps flesh out some of these ideas. We start with, do you have a method? And is the method documented in a course, or is there a very detailed documentation of what's included? Because we want to make sure that we're getting those copyright registrations for the material itself. So the next phase of that is, what length of time is this person going to go through a program? And I have clients that it's 8 weeks. I have clients that it's a year or more. It just depends on what you need to really be able to teach them the method and then teach them the competency on how to teach the method. And there's that meta level happening again. From there, we have all the normal business terms. How much is that going to cost? Are there going to be weekly calls? And I never tell people in the certification agreement that they're buying up front that they're guaranteed certification. They have a certification opportunity if they meet certain prerequisites, like showing up to the calls and, consuming the material, all of that. Then we work together on actually creating the certification process. For some people, it's just like more of a rubber stamp. You showed up, that's great. You can go out in the world and call yourself a certified XYZ coach or practitioner. For other people, it's more of a journaling exercise. Explain to me how you're going to work with clients using this material. Explain to me what's changed in your own business and worldview as a result of consuming this material. And then some people have a full-fledged certification week, and people are scrambling around and doing tests and the whole thing. And there's nothing wrong or better about any of those. And we work together to talk about what your goals for the program are, like legacy-wise, with the resulting community and with the resulting business that comes from it, so that I can have a good understanding of which of these choices you would make relative to achieving the goals that you personally have for the certification. Certifications actually are quite a bit of work to administer, or can be, again, justifying that higher price point, but also it's something that usually by the time you're creating it, you do have some team in place, or you've got really good automations. And so we want to maximize all of those resources to kind of establish and make concrete your advantage and your place in the marketplace. So this is could be an advanced business opportunity, but also it's usually by people who are starting to think about taking a step back from the industry. So we want to make sure that we're not developing a program that's just going to be a whole bunch of different kind of work that you don't want to be doing. I'm really cognizant about that. And that's definitely something non-legal that I bring to the table in the course of creating the certification. Now, once we have all of that fleshed out, we determine what they get as a result of being certified. And usually at a minimum, that's the right to use the certified name. That's the right to, have a logo that they can use, and potentially even to appear in a directory. But then going forward, the sky's the limit in terms of what you can offer and what you might charge for in the future. It may be that you require them to recertify periodically and pay a fee to do that, otherwise the certification lapses. It may be that if they want to be in an ongoing alumni community, there's a fee for that. It could be that you offer them some marketing materials, that they can kind of customize with their name on a quarterly basis. That may mean the yearly renewal fee is a little higher because you've got to account for the fact that you're giving them resources. It may mean that you have different post-certification tracks like masterminds. So Brooke Castillo of the Life Coach School, she charges $21,000 for certification, just base certification. And then if you want to go forward, there's kind of many tracks actually, but 2 of them are for people who want to be hired as coaches. And then there's a track for people who want to be entrepreneurs as coaches and have their own businesses. Tina Forsyth, I mentioned, she's got a relatively low price certification, but then she's got masterminds that I think are about $3,500 to $5,000 a year that people, renew year after year because they want that support and community with people that they have the same business identity with. So many opportunities here, but the fact is that usually these alumni communities are going to pop up, whether they're formal or informal. So we want to make sure that you're thinking of that ahead of time so that, again, if it's something that you want to monetize or something that you want to make sure you're along for the ride with them, that you're putting that out in front of them. And truth be told, for almost every single one of my clients who has gone the certification route, they came to it somewhat reluctantly, in the sense that they're like, this is like a whole new undertaking. Do I want to do this? It's a whole business line. But the answer, it was almost mandatory that they do it because their audience wanted it. And it's a great problem to have. It's not insurmountable to overcome and get it created, but this is not an area where you just slap together your normal group coaching program agreement and start signing people up. We have a lot of fixing to do when that does happen. And like I say, I've had a lot of clients this year who were already, had a lot of people signed up, so we were able to fix it, but it's not ideal. When all of those pieces are in place, I put together the legal documents so that you can either run your first or next or finish your current certification. And the nice thing about doing that and really having the forward thinking about it is that you're not going to have cohorts who were promised different things. Everybody who comes in knows exactly where they stand. And there are some big brands in the industry, Life Coach School included and Kendall Summerhawk included, where they later tried to retract or minimize, and it left the original certified practitioners really in limbo, and it left a bad taste in their mouth. So I encourage you, when you're creating that community of peers, you've got to do it right out of the gate, because you can get yourself into some really negative situations with people who are supposed to be brand ambassadors and want to be brand ambassadors. So that's kind of the thinking process in setting up a certification program, to reflect the level of detail and the time invested in doing this right and protecting what is really your life's work a lot of times. I do this in a VIP day setting. So again, you get that training and the questionnaire. I need that like a day before we sit down, and usually we spend about 2 hours on the phone together, where I want to see behind the scenes, like inside your membership portal. I want to understand who you're working with. I want to take the material that's in that questionnaire and really get a sense of being inside your business so that I can draft all of these documents to you. I deliver them to you in a Google Drive, and it takes, usually a couple of weeks turnaround time for me to get the legal documents to you. And then we have a sit down where we go through and make sure that it really adequately reflects at least the framework that you're envisioning for your certification now. We have a lot of flexibility in there to add, not so much to change once you've had people join, but we try to get a minimum viable product out the door, especially for those of you who are more reluctant about setting this up to begin with. And then we make sure you've got all the documents in place all the way through that life cycle, so that you can just incorporate it into your workflow and get to the point where you're enrolling people kind of on an evergreen basis. And like I say, it can be very lucrative, because usually these are going to be a 5-figure engagement, sometimes 4, but usually 5, depending on what you ultimately end up including. So to reflect that, my price point is $7,800 for that. It does include a trademark registration as well as copyright registration. There are only, all right, let me turn to some questions and get off my little soapbox here. Sharon, you said, so that's like the DISC assessment. I think you made that comment when I was talking about designations versus certifications. And so one is the stamp of approval, kind of an unusual way to think about the designation type of certification is like when we look at someone's resume and we see if they've gone to Harvard, it's a stamp of approval. Like there's something in the market about that kind of pedigree that tells us something that's likely true about them and how they'll perform. This is more specific because it's like, Harvard is just like a general educational institution, but if it's a profit first professional, we know that they're all about paying yourself first. Or if they're a certified OBM, they know that Tina has taught them all the nitty-gritty details of staying on top of client work in an online business manager role. It brings like a sense of cachet that they've been certified by a particular group. All right, so Joy says, when you set up a certification program for people to resell your program, what would be the responsibility to maintain that program beyond the initial purchase date? This is a really good question, and this is kind of one of the things that we flesh out. There are, once the program is created, and let's say you run a cohort through it, and you say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. We will have already had a conversation about whether they have lifetime access to the materials of both the method as well as how to teach the method. And so if that's lifetime access and you decide you don't want to maintain the portal anymore, we can make sure that we deliver them access to the material as it exists at that time, and then you can close down the portal. So that could either be delivering hard copies on like CDs or thumb drives, uploading it to Dropbox and giving them, X period of time to download the materials. But as far as their ability to use the certification for like a lifetime, that they can do if that's what they were promised. You would have to, at the 5-year mark and at the 9-year mark, make sure you renew the trademark for it. But otherwise, you don't have an obligation to continue selling or delivering or supporting the certification. Usually the ongoing support obligations are part of a license agreement or post-certification like Mastermind. And when I draft those, I always give you the opportunity to terminate that so that you don't have to be like, having a monthly call for your certified practitioners on your deathbed. Like, you can shut that portion of the business down if you decide not to sell it or whatever the case may be. So let me know if that answers your question, Joy. I think I am getting the gist, but I may be missing where you were going with that. And someone says, in setting up a certification program, can you create a plan that lets someone else use your program ideas and still ensure they preserve your brand? In other words, it sounds like it's possible to set parameters on the usage. Yeah, that's a very good way of saying it. In allowing a certification where they can reteach, you put in the parameters of how they're allowed to use it. And what I mean by that, I'll give you a few different examples. Some people decide to create a certification because they're really done running groups. They're like, I want to do just very high ticket one-on-one work for very specific clients that I pick and choose, but like otherwise I'm done running more of these mass market programs. So it could be that you only give your certified practitioners the right to teach groups. And those groups can then go out and apply these methodologies with their own clients. That would be one way to limit the usage through the channel. Like they can only teach it in group settings. It may be instead, and actually this is an important point, once you are really intimately familiar with your material and your clients and you know them inside and out, what you may discover if you think about it closely is that yes, you've got a method, and then you've got all these other resources that you've created over time and questions you've answered and things that you've tried. But those are not technically required to get a result for the average point A client. So to maintain your own competitive advantage, if you want to still continue offering this method in the marketplace under your own names, you would just sell the certification using the core method. But all this other stuff that you've created, you don't have to deliver that. They don't get the right to use that. They may even see you out in the marketplace using it. They may have even been your own client and seen you using it and experienced it. That doesn't mean they get the rights to use it. I have a cat that is just really... Get out of here! Sorry. The home office experience is like not ideal. Anyway, so yes, the whole point of the certification is that we are establishing very clear boundaries on the usage, and what people are buying is the right to the specific ways that you've promised them to use it. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. Joy says helpful information. What if someone discontinues the certification program within the first year after they sell it? The program no longer exists before it was possible to achieve the promised certification. That could potentially be a breach of contract depending on how the contract was worded. So that's going again, like my methodology is that I only promise a certification opportunity. To be honest, that is more to address the fact that someone may not be able to express to you that they have the competencies to reteach the material and you want to cut off their right to reteach other people. This is a little different. What you're asking, like if they just say, nope, never mind, I'm shutting down the program. That sounds more like legal, actionable, if I'm understanding it correctly. So if a certification was promised or a certification opportunity, they would need to fulfill that. Otherwise, potentially refund and some lawsuit stuff. So